Legions of the Roman Empire during the 2nd century. So each legion had about 4,000 to 6,000 soldiers in it. So all 30 legions would be about 150,000 men. To start things off, we have 1 legion in Iberia, 1 legion in North Africa, 1 legion in modern-day Egypt, 2 legions in the Alps, 4 in modern-day France, and then 3 in Britannia. Finally, this is when things get crazy. There were 8 legions in Anatolia and 10 out here in the Balkans and like modern-day Hungary, Austria. You could really see where the Romans felt threatened, obviously, just depending on where they were putting their legions. I mean, obviously, there's really nothing to worry about in Iberia. That's why they only had 1. Same goes for all of Northern Africa. I mean, I guess they weren't too concerned about anyone just south of the Sahara Desert. This thing basically acts like a giant wall anyways. They were clearly a little bit annoyed by the Celts and everything in like Scottish lands. They were definitely a little bit bothered, just to say the least, of those guys. But it's safe to assume they were way more concerned with the Germanic barbarians, as well as maybe the Persians out here far to the east. Keep in mind, there was a pretty big Parthian empire out in Persia, as well as some other concerning things this way as well. Staring at this 2nd century world map actually shouldn't make the other legion map really that surprising. Like we said, you can see where the threats lie, so their legions are going to be close to where they need to defend their lands. Still really cool to see it outlined like this, though. A map showing the greatest extent of the Russian Empire. This is the biggest they ever got in history. Keep in mind, they're going to be a lot larger than just the Soviet Union here, although the Soviet Union did have a ton of influence on neighboring states too. But no, this is a Russian empire with all these lands integrated within the nation itself. So you can see Siberia doesn't really change much. This is still the exact same. Central Asia is firmly under control of this Russian empire though, just like it was in the Soviet Union. That is obviously not the case for modern day Russia right now though. They do stretch down through the Caucasus Mountains over here. They're also bordering a Germany and Austria-Hungary pretty deep into the European continent. Of course, they also have all of the Baltic states as well as Finland. And finally, the big one, this was before they sold Alaska to the US, and that is a big reason why the Russian Empire was at this moment the biggest they ever got. They're actually the 3rd biggest empire in all of history, just behind the Mongol Empire and the British Empire. They controlled almost 17% of all the surface area. Keep in mind, the Soviet Union at its height was 8.65 million miles squared. This Russian Empire was only 8.8, so it doesn't like completely destroy the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was still huge. It's just the additions of Alaska and Finland really helped it out. Keep in mind though, this map isn't including certain things, like they did get Alaska, but there was a moment in time where Russia did have colonies in California. That's right, Fort Ross there for a second was a warm water port for them. And they also had a Russian fort in the Hawaiian Islands as well. This was literally hard to believe the first time I discovered it. I don't think this could necessarily be like drawn on a map. It's just like kind of a tiny thing. Still, they was out here for a little bit there. Every state's favorite Valentine's candy. My home state of California, we have conversation hearts. I kind of feel like these are a little overrated. Like, is there not something better to choose? In Texas, their favorite is Hershey's Kisses. I get that. Valentine's Day after all. Single people gotta get kisses somehow. That was stupid as fuck. I knew I had to make some dumb joke there, though. There's the classic heart-shaped box of chocolates in Ohio. Only in Ohio. No, actually, that's a lot of states' favorite, like Indiana, Minnesota, Nevada, Georgia. There we go, New Mexico. That's a unique one. Chocolate roses. I've never seen anyone in my entire life eat one of those. I've only seen people buy them. Wyoming doesn't really count because they barely exist. I am an M&M's guy myself. Nice job at North Dakota, Iowa, as well as Kansas. Rhode Island's doing something a little bit different. They're just going with chocolate hearts. Oh, Maine too. They're not necessarily putting it in a heart box. Just make the chocolate itself the heart. What is Cupid corn, Michigan? Candy corn? Oh, it is. Why does this look like it doesn't taste as good as candy corn though? I know some people like despise candy corn. I like candy corn. Don't tell me like the flavor is slightly different. Candy necklaces. What are y'all doing in my birth state, Alabama? You better not be giving those to your sister. I'd really like to know how this information was gathered, but regardless, all right. All the places simply called A. I actually don't think that's how that's pronounced because it has a little halo on top of it. Please tell me Wikipedia has the answer for this. Oh, I thought it was named O. Oh, I actually knew that because these Finnish islands are called O-land, but that is actually not going to make this map because they had the land at the end. So all these places are simply named O. So Denmark has an O. I guess I should mention sometimes it's pronounced slightly differently depending on the country. Sweden has an O. Are you supposed to say an O in English? But then for some very strange reason, we have Norway with several O's. And a lot of them all in the same spot. I get when you have a place name that's repeated throughout your country, but you know, when it's like sprinkled all over. There is no excuse for this, Norway. You should be ashamed of yourself. When I throw this weird A into Norwegian translator, it just says two. I don't think it's that That's simple though. O is just O in Swedish. O means a small river in Danish, Swedish, and Norwegian. Okay, that doesn't really explain this phenomenon up here though. I'm pretty sure they have a lot of small rivers everywhere. Like, why would you do this? I would hate to be living in one of these cities and expect my Amazon package to not be shipped to the wrong address. 11 classic cross-country road trips. So we have arguably the most famous, if you're a Californian, the One or Pacific Coast Highway. That goes all the way from Seattle to San Diego, Washington to the bottom tip of California. Let me tell you, it might seem glorious, but it would literally be hell on earth. The over 1,500 mile long journey would take you 32 hours, and I'd argue maybe a little bit more depending on road closures. I mean, I guess if you're like really into road trips or something, but I'm good. You'll be hitting like red lights every 2 seconds, pedestrians that'll just walk out in front of you, and then of course the flooding. I don't know, maybe I'm just really cynical. I just would not want to do this journey. Maybe it's different like outside of Southern California, but I would assume it would maybe be just as bad off the 6 or the Atlantic Coast Highway. Might be even worse over there, to be honest, just because it's the East Coast. Way more people to worry about. There's the all too famous Route 66, which will take you through a whole lot of the desert, but then it'll also go through Oklahoma, Missouri, and Chicago, Illinois. So there's that. I want to try this Appalachian Trail. That seems real fun. The 3 is literally called the Road to Nowhere. What? How exactly are these states supposed to feel? I mean, oh, come on. The 9 is the loneliest road. Who came up with these names? They're on point. The 2 will take you border to border. You can actually go pretty deep into Canada, but then it stops at Mexico. Or maybe it keeps going in Mexico. We don't know. No one will know. I'm sorry, I'm just not a road trip person, so this doesn't ever seem fun. This person asks, which country has the most naturally armored area on Earth? I think it's China. I guess not a lot of people agreed with them because their account got deleted. So here's another 3D relief map, but it really emphasizes the mountain ranges so you can see the good like fortifications on Earth. There's definitely a lot of mountains and hills on the western portion of the US. Those same things stretch all the way up through Canada and Alaska. Then there's the Andes all the way down in South America as well. There's Africa, which is relatively flat overall, except for Ethiopia. And then Europe, you have to worry about the Alps and of course all of Norway. The issue with China being the most fortified here though is that most of their population is along the coast, and it would technically be very easy just to kind of send ships in, you know? I mean, not easy, but I'm just saying like it's not hard to get in there. Compared to like, for instance, the Swiss. There's a reason why Switzerland's managed to stay neutral this whole time, and that's because no one wants to deal with the headache of trying to invade in the Alps. Even Skinny Mustache Man himself was like, yeah, it ain't worth it. On the opposite side of things, you can kind of see why Poland isn't a very fortified position and why that country has collapsed so many times in history. It's just flat right here. I love looking at the literal massive wall that separates India from China. Even though these two countries are right next to each other, it's like they don't even know who each other even are. And historically speaking, it's also why these two places have just kind of been so different. Iran is definitely a nice contender. You could literally see their political borders just along the mountain range itself. It's almost a little bit too perfect, actually. Let's see what everybody else thinks. The state of New Mexico now produces more oil than Mexico and Venezuela. Back in the year 2000, they weren't even hitting 0.5 million barrels per day, where at this very same time, both Mexico and Venezuela were at 3 million. Mexico really popped off and Venezuela dropped, but then they eventually caught back up to each other later in the 2010s. There's actually been a huge decline in 2016 though from these two countries, and meanwhile the exact opposite has happened in New Mexico. As of 2018, things have just skyrocketed. This is not something I would have expected from this US state. Usually we just meme about Breaking Bad there or something. What foreign ways of doing things would Americans embrace? This ought to be good. So in purple, it would be the percentage of Americans that would prefer to do things this way, and in this red sort of color would prefer not to do things this way. And the top thing here is actually all areas in a town or city are accessible by sidewalks, making it easier to walk anywhere. Yeah, this is something that we don't really do in America. You like physically can't even cross a road sometimes. Yeah, car-based infrastructure. The second thing is sales tax is included in the price of the items on store shelves. Oh wow, yeah, that would be nice. I never even thought of this. I think the 99-cent store would have to change their name though. Third thing, a national minimum paid vacation allowance on top of federal holidays. Yeah, some companies offer this, but definitely not all of them. 56% of Americans agree that wait staff are paid at a higher minimum wage. That means you are not expected to tip them. And things start to get pretty even down here when it comes to this topic. The government calculating your tax and automatically deducting it from every paycheck, meaning employees don't have to file for tax returns every year. I can see why you would and wouldn't want this. I see what's going on here with this 40%. Now for the topic that Americans really don't want that other foreign countries do. If a home has a washer and or dryer, they are kept in the kitchen or bathroom rather than a utility room. Oh yeah, how would you want that? I noticed a lot of places in Europe did do that. I didn't really think about it that much. I wouldn't want my house like that though. Also, it seems like a lot of Americans really don't like the metric system. I guess my Durnil propaganda has not really been working. I mean, it's too late to change. I'm just saying, like, I wanted it when I was in kindergarten, so I didn't have to remember all these random numbers. I don't really care anymore, though. Oh man, I wish this one was way higher. Much greater use of traffic circles or roundabouts instead of traffic light intersections. Are you serious? Only 34%? Who does it? No! Yo, okay. It's because these people do not have enough experience, I think, or they're scared. They're little babies. I literally sit at every single traffic light now thinking about how much time I could have saved if this intersection was a roundabout. You know when you're sitting at like a red light at 2 a.m. and you're literally wasting like 30 to 60 seconds of your life right here? Like, no one's coming. Why can't I just go? You know what I'm saying? You know the average person spends 6 months of their life waiting for red lights to turn green. Do I need to say anything else? What else do you want? What more do you want? I don't know. I don't know why this is like my number one issue. Like, why do I have to wait? I just need to shut up. I'm sorry. Let's move on. I think this was overall pretty fascinating though. Places that do not exist, at least according to the internet. So these are all places that have typically been memed that they aren't real. They're actually all just a lie. Here's the big one, Wyoming, and I have been a big pusher of this. I do have to say though, it wasn't me that started it.
Here's our first
This whole thing can be traced back all the way
There's
to
no
the
such
Garfield
place
times,
as
so
Wyoming.
this has been running for a while. That episode aired all the way back in 1989. I wasn't even alive then. However, I do find some of these other ones funny because I remember I was there when some of this stuff started. I was here for ground zero. Like, for all the Wyoming stuff isn't real, I'm just kind of joining in with the choir. I'm not exactly sure when the Finland isn't real memes began, but I know I've been saying this before it was cool. I've had my channel for almost 10 years now, and I remember when the internet found out Australia wasn't real. I made a video about it 4 years ago and everything. Still to this day, I get so many people that are angry about that. Yeah, Laserbeam made a video about the Australia is fake stuff a while ago, and then I've never seen the end of it. It seems like a lot of the countries do have their own little spot that they claim is not real. Well, there's all of Paraguay that's just not real. That's just, yeah, that's all the country. I would assume some of these places probably don't have like a whole lot of population maybe, or maybe it's just like really easy to meme or something. That's why this stuff took off. I mean, that's why Wyoming is considered to be not real, because no one's ever met anyone from Wyoming. Technically, according to YouTube analytics, I don't have a single Wyoming viewer. Look at this. What is this? That still makes literally no sense to me. I've got viewers from DC, but none from Wyoming. You cannot tell me it's real now. The largest reported Asian ancestry group in the US. And it's even broken down by counties too. So for the states in red like California, Oregon, Idaho, Washington, Wyoming, the largest Asian ancestry group is Chinese. Then all these places in orange like Arizona, Texas, Arkansas, a lot of the deep south, but it does stretch all the way to Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Michigan. This Asian ancestry group is Indian. We have Filipinos that dominate Montana, North Dakota, Nevada, New Mexico, and Alaska and Hawaii, and then Vietnamese in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Oklahoma. I don't know how that happened. If you break it down by just population in general, India is number one. They're the largest group, just ahead of the Chinese by almost 100,000. There's also Filipino, Vietnamese, and Korean, which Korean wasn't even on this top part. There's a lot more groups included in the county-wide version here. That dark blue is actually representing people from Laos, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, Louisiana too. Alaska is actually split between Filipino and Korean. What's most fascinating about this list though is all of those white counties, there's none. How is there none? There's not even a single person. There is no largest Asian ancestry group in the white counties. Some of these places probably like just have really low population in general, but still there's a lot of white all throughout this map. A lot of New England is just split between Chinese or Indian. It looks like Filipinos dominate California, but I guess that's not the case. Maybe they dominate Southern California, but way more Chinese ancestry come from the north. There's Vietnamese down here in Orange County. It's interesting to look for like some of the more rare stuff like Sri Lankan. Can we find one? Sri Lanka? There's got to be a Sri Lankan county on here if they're labeled. Is it this in New Mexico? This is a crazy map breakdown. And big thanks to my patrons. Drew, I forgot to kidnap you. Next date is March 19th, 2023. The Polish, Lithuanian, Commonwealth, Taylor, Portugal
John
is
Denver,
not Balkans.
good ol' Riot,
244,
Iowa,
aka Drew, if you don't
Barbados
come to
ball,
Krakow,
Drew's
Poland, I will find
Argentinian
you.
grandpa,
$20 is a lot,
Drew.
Drew.
Why am I
Taylor
doing
Henson,
this?
Drew
And
does
Drew's
everything
got
for $20.
Jack
Draven's
Luxembourg
annoying
Lover,
Robert
RyeThePie,
Twickenhamster,